Welcome, everybody, to the Cone of Shame Veterinary Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Andy Rourke. Guys, I've got a really good one today. This is one with Dr. Dana Varble. She is the Chief Veterinary Officer at NAVC, and I saw an article that she wrote about a board complaint that was made against her. And she talks about if you're a doctor, getting sued and getting a board complaint is something that you should make peace with the idea of. And we jump into it. And she talks very candidly about a board complaint that was made against her back in the day. And it did not destroy her career. She's a chief veterinary officer at NAVC. And so we talk about that. I think it's great. I love that she shares a story. I think there's a lot of stigma around board complaints or getting sued or things like that. I think that there is a ton of fear, and I mean real fear, especially in young veterinarians, about board complaints or getting sued, and it can be crippling and it can hold you back and from your own development. And I think that's unwarranted. And so that having Dana on to talk about what her experience was and kind of what she learned and what the process was like, I hope that what that does is take some of the fear out of this process. If you're documenting correctly, if you're communicating, if you're setting expectations, you're going to reduce the risk of that happening. But you can't make them go to zero. And so I do think this is something that we all just need to be a little bit more comfortable with. Let's not embrace it. Let's not enjoy it. Let's not get in the habit. But it is something that shouldn't terrify us. And I think Dana talks about this with positivity, with a look of experience, someone having gone through it, and someone who came out the other side and still loves practice and has gone on and still loves what she does. And so anyway, guys, this is a good episode. Let's get into it.
This is your show. We're glad you're here. We want to help you in your veterinary career. Welcome to the Cone of Shame with Dr. Andy Rourke.
Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Dana Varble. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. How are you, Andy?
I'm doing really great. I'm super glad that you're here.
Good.
You and I have been friends for a couple of years now. We met through your work at the NAVC. You are the Chief Veterinary Officer of the NAVC.
Yep, you got it.
So, yeah,
you got
I was
it.
like, Chief Medical Officer? Nope. Chief Veterinary Officer of the NAVC. So you are in that role and capacity. You also still practice. You are at Chicago Exotics, and you made a job for yourself where you you show up one day a week and you do surgery on exotic animals and then you leave. Is that correct?
Yes, it's correct. It's a very unique position right now. It's worked out for them. It's worked out for me, but we're all enjoying it.
God,
yeah.
I love this profession. I love it so much. This is so great.
I know, right?
It's amazing.
Who would have thought that you could do that for a living? And among other things. But yeah.
I wanted to bring you on. I want to talk to you. So you write a column in Today's Veterinary Practice every month as a Chief Veterinary Officer for NAVC. And the last column that you had that came out was called These Terrible Things Aren't That Terrible. And the subheader is, here's a secret. If you stay in veterinary medicine long enough, you will get sued and taken to the board, but it won't be career ending if you learn from it and move forward. And I was like, oh boy, it's a lot to unpack here. And so anyway, so I saw this. I saw this, and it took me back to my first year as a veterinarian. And I was working at this big practice, and one of my colleagues who came out, who had started with me, and so she was in her first year, and she had a cat come in that needed an E-tube, an esophagostomy tube. And so they were going to put a feeding tube in this cat, and she was going to do it. And then she turned to one of the more senior surgeons, so a doctor who did a lot of surgery, and she said, hey, can you just kind of watch over as I do this? And he was like, sure. So they went in, they put the tube in. Everything was fine. You know, the case went okay. They fed the cat okay. Like the cat was eating through the tube, and then ultimately it got stronger, and it goes home. But then I think it was something minor, like a surgical site infection. Something like that. That it took longer to heal up. It left a scar, but nothing was life threatening, and the cat survived and did fine. And the owner ultimately took my friend and the senior doctor to the board, and she said they'd put the tube in the wrong side of the neck. And I have gone and looked, and I remember like, I don't think there is a right side and a wrong side. I think
technically,
you can
right?
Yeah. And so, but she was like, no, they put it in the left side, and it's supposed to be in the right side. And so, anyway, ultimately, it didn't go anywhere, and it got thrown out. But in the 6 to 8 weeks that my friends waited, both of them waited for this case, one of my friends lost about 10 pounds. And again,
Yeah.
they just, it wore them down just waiting to see how this would go and what would be. And I have never
Wow.
forgotten it. So that emotional toll is a big deal. And then how many young doctors do I talk to who are terrified that someone's they're gonna get sued or something's gonna happen? I mean, it's absolute horror for them.
Yeah. And that's what inspired this column is I had been speaking to someone who was in veterinary school and somehow the subject came up of being taken to the board or being sued and they were petrified already.
Yes.
And I'm like, you're not even in practice yet. You haven't practiced anything yet. Don't be petrified. Don't be petrified. You've manifested this incredible fear, this incredible stress for something not even that hasn't happened to you, but it's not even a situation
it can't even happen to you. It can't even happen to you. Like you're not even in a place to be threatened by this yet.
Yeah. You don't have a board that you report to really yet.
Yeah.
So it's amazing. There's a lot of stress. I'm almost worried, and I do worry there's some stigma around board complaints and legal actions. And like your friends, more often than not, when I speak to other veterinarians and they talk about board complaints or times they've faced legal action, it's not the cases you think are going to be the big ones. It's not the case where you're like, I actually did make a mistake. I dosed something wrong. Something went wrong. I should have known that. I should have checked on it. I should have been more, I don't know, responsible or double check something. It's the cases where you're like, gosh, I really did the best I could. Everything went great. Yeah. And then just circumstances.
Yeah.
Something came up.
That's the case with this cat. I think that was kind of what rocked me at the time was I was like, how did the cat die? Like the cat didn't die. The cat got better and went home.
Everything went good. Yeah.
Everything worked out. The incision was slow to heal and that was the thing. So so in this piece that you wrote, your line was here, my eyes were gradually coming back into focus and the fog was lifting. This case is dismissed. So tell me the story. Like, so you've been through this sort of experience. What happened?
Kind of like it's a different case, certainly, but it was working emergency at the time. And I just want to shout out to all the emergency doctors and techs out there because I feel like emergency is a little more ripe for this kind of circumstances arising. The relationship between you and the pet owner is just not as solid. So I think that's always a little bit harder. But working emergency and my techs carried back a rabbit. And I was like, oh, you know how those things, there's certain things in your career where you're like, the picture is still very clear of this happening because a little bit of trauma around that, but they carried back the rabbit. I'm like, oh, the rabbit, did it die? And they're like, no. And I was like, oh my God, okay. So this rabbit was basically, near death, very low blood sugar, no palpable pulses. And my team was really great with exotics at that particular emergency clinic because they knew I saw them. And we had managed to get an IV catheter in this rabbit and correct its blood sugar and provide, IV fluid support. And for anyone that's ever gotten an IV in a rabbit, already we're batting 1,000. Like we're doing really good. This is a rabbit that had no palpable pulses. We couldn't get a blood sample from. It was in pretty bad shape. And long story short, the rabbit did well for about 4 to 6 hours. It was probably septic. This is probably an animal that had a poor prognosis. Obviously, anytime you have an animal come in and you think it might be not with us anymore, and your technician goes, no, I need you now. Yeah. Prognosis is not good, but the rabbit we managed to support the rabbit. It had stayed alive for about, I want to say 8 hours and it passed away. Okay. And the owner just was someone who had a lot of emotional attachment to their pet, as a lot of our owners do. Sure. And I explained to her the situation. I remember explaining when the rabbit came in, like, it's not looking good, like prognosis isn't good. And, when I called her and told her the rabbit passed, she was emotional, but seemed understanding. And we talked about care of remains, and that was that. And I ended my shift that morning, bummed, but thinking I had done, like your friends, the best that I could, done a really good job. And the way board complaints often work is there's a delay, as we all know. So you get, you go about your business and then you find out, you get a notification, usually in the mail. It's usually certified mail or something like that. And I got a notification that I was being taken to the board. And I just remember being so shocked because this is not one of those cases. As we just mentioned, this is one of the ones where I went, something went wrong. Something was Joe strong. We didn't handle that well. And I wouldn't have that feeling at all.
Yeah.
So I think part of the shock of it was that tremendous disconnect between everything I thought I had done right.
Yeah.
And everything that owner thought maybe I had done wrong.
Yeah.
And, it was a very challenging case. There was a little bit, the big disappointment, I didn't write this in the column, but it's something that it's great to discuss is that the owner came when the complaint came to me, and the board sends you documentation and you have this enormous emotional weight of dealing with it and rehashing the case and looking over everything you did. And really, it's hard. You're hard on yourself because you go back and you're like, oh my God, should I have done something different? You question every single thing you did, even if you know it was right, even if you confirm it was right.
Right.
You check with a colleague, you're really wrapped up in it. What really was like the real the knife in this case was that another veterinarian had written a letter with had consulted this owner and had said, well, yeah, they should have done blood work. They should have done full blood panel. And they had a point, which I could look at now. But at the time, I was crushed.
Yeah.
I was like, one of my colleagues thought I did something wrong. One of my colleagues, not an owner, not, a lay person. One of my colleagues thought I should have done something different. And I look back now and I'm like, okay, again, hindsight is one of these wonderful things where we can look back with a different perspective. And I was like, well, yeah, it would have been great to do full blood work on an animal that I could have gotten blood from.
Yeah. Yes. I think it's a vitally important point right now is if your heart's not beating, it's really hard to draw blood.
This is an animal that had no palpable pulses.
Yeah.
Drawing blood on a, when this could have happened in a cat, any small animal where, when their blood pressure drops, getting a blood sample is tremendously difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, this happens with children in human medicine. It happens with everything. So that was, I think, the real emotional blow with this one.
That would have been really hard. The truth of the matter is the chances of you getting a full blood panel and it changing the outcome in this case are essentially zero in my mind. And it bothers me. I can imagine the other veterinarian being put in a hard place where the owner says, is there anything this person could have done? And they're like, well, I mean, they could have gotten a full blood panel. I mean, that's right. And you could always say, well, they could have done this. Did you know the other veterinarian?
I didn't. And I think back, to this day, again, it's one of those things like perspective now, like what you said, I'm sure they were put, this was a person who was grieving. They probably came at them and said, tell me anything anything that makes me. And the other thing, again, you start to understand, and I think she felt tremendously guilty.
Yes.
And you could see that even when she presented, this rabbit was on death's door, unfortunately, and you could see the guilt in her face. You could see it in her emotions. I mean, I don't recall her actually saying it, but she felt a lot of guilt. So I think that's something to keep in mind too, when things like this happen to you. Realize you're dealing with people that are going through a lot of emotional turmoil themselves, and they don't know how to deal with it sometimes.
Well, I mean, that's how we feel on our best days. Like when I've had a snack and I'm well rested. Yes. that is the mindset that I have. Did you get resentful? I mean, I would have struggled not to be angry. I would have really struggled not to be angry. I would have felt like I went to the mat for you and you absolutely stabbed me in the back. Like that's how I think I would have had a hard time not being angry about it every day.
I think you go through that whole range of like grief emotions.
Yes.
You're sad, you're resentful, you're angry. There's a level of acceptance, but there's also, it's hard to get through that when you have this looming future board process coming up. And you don't know what the outcome's going to be. You don't know. You don't know how your actions are going to be perceived by. And remember,
totally.
I had this peer already telling me something wrong. Now the board is made up of your other peers.
Yeah.
And it really makes you second guess. Like if this peer didn't agree with me, what are these other people going to think?
That's-
oh my God.
That's the worst. Yeah, because you don't know what they're going to think, and they can't tell you, and they're not going to tell you. Was there any part of the process when you think about the actual process of going through the way that the board engaged with you? Was there any part of the process that you felt was unfair, or did you feel like you were treated as fairly as you could be by like the board and sort of this litigation process?
It's interesting because I think it's very easy and it's also very human to let your emotions make you feel like it's not fair.
Yes.
Even if, again, subjectively, it's a reasonably fair process, to be honest.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, in retrospect, I'm like, oh no, it was totally fair. Everything was fine. But at the time I was like, this is unfair.
Yeah.
I worked so hard. Why are they targeting me? Why don't they look at this and just know this person is grieving it? But they don't. They can't. I think we forget that the board is there to protect both pet owners, but they're also there to protect us from members of our profession that may have fallen by the wayside, that may be struggling, that may have made a mistake or be actively making mistakes that are unethical, that are unfair. So I know a lot of times when people talk about the board, they're like, oh, they're here to protect owners. They don't care about vets. I get that, but remember, they're also protecting us from someone in our own profession. There are not many, thank goodness. Yeah. We're by and large a very honest, ethical profession, but they are protecting us from our own professional bad guys, if you will. So, in a way, when you look back at it, if you're not one of those bad guys, I think that's something to help change your perspective a little bit.
I think everyone secretly wonders if they're the bad guy, Dana. I think everyone secretly is like, am I the bad guy? I had that thought recently. Yes. I saw a vet doing something and I was like, my first thought was, I would not do it that way. And then I thought, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm the one who's out of line?
Yeah.
Here? But yeah, I think we all secretly wonder if we're it's the stuff of nightmares. It's like I thought I was doing it right,
absolutely.
and then everyone is like, you did that, and then I lose my license.
You did what?
And my marriage falls apart, and then I lose my house, and I live in a box by the river.
And you can literally talk yourself into the van down by the river in 10 seconds or less. Yeah, and you're like, there it is. That's how it happens.
Did your views on board complaints in general change? Like, did you think about board complaints one way, and then having gone through on the other side, do you kind of fundamentally think about them differently now?
I do. So two things. What I shared with you. One, they're out there. They're to protect the public. They're here to protect our profession from bad actors. Yeah. But the other thing I think that the experience changed me, and what I really wanted to share in the article is, I think, especially I was earlier in my career when this happened, not super early, but earlier. I assumed that a board complaint meant you were a bad veterinarian, your career was probably going down the tubes, you weren't going anywhere, you were doomed. You were doomed. Yeah. That was it. It was the death knell for you. Like, you were going to be lucky to be given vaccines on a street corner for $10 an hour, back to that, down the proverbial wash tube. And I think afterwards I realized, sometimes these things just happen. It has nothing to do with you, the quality of medicine you practice, your communication skills, the quality of your medicine. Sometimes you do everything right and you have an owner that doesn't get it, feels wronged, is going through their own grieving, 1,000 reasons, their own grieving process, their own guilt. And this is how they processed it. So it's sort of disappointing that there's not a lot of ways to filter out like these really egregious complaints for the board. Like they can't. So I know some of them do. They look at it and go, yeah, there's no basis here. This is getting thrown out. But they still have to look at them all, right? And in the meantime, you still have to go, this is a big red flashing light in the camera of my mind.
Yeah, when you're going through that waiting time, because I was talking to somebody about this recently. I had this thing; it was years ago, but I got a tax refund, and so we filed my taxes, and they gave me a refund, and they were like, "Do you want this applied to next year's taxes, or do you want a check?" And I said, I want it applied to next year's taxes, I think. And then the tax year sort of comes around over. And for whatever reason, they did not credit it towards towards the taxes. And so ultimately they were like, you way underpaid your taxes this year. And I was like, no, you asked me, like, this money should have been applied. And they were like,
what?
And again, this is the IRS. So they deal in certified letters, which are terrifying. And ultimately what happened was
absolutely.
They send me a check, and I'm like, this is not helping at all. Like, this makes it worse. And I'm like, I'm worried if I cash this, then I'm going to validate everything they said. And they're communicating by letters, which come like every 3 months. And they're all like, we're going to take your house. And so I'm getting these letters from the IRS that say they're going to take my house, and there's no way out. And you have to go through the process. You know what I mean? It's this, here's the information you've requested. Once again, here's my position. Here is the documentation for my accountant. But that ongoing process, it just absolutely sucked. And so I was thinking about, what do you do when you're in this horrible, just a wait time period? And so let me ask you that, Dana. Were there any coping mechanisms that you picked up as you were just waiting for this terrible thing to make its way through the system and reach resolution?
Yes. And it's interesting because obviously like the wait times on these vary from, a handful of weeks, because these are state institutions. Every state has different timelines and ability to get through these things, to months, to I've heard some horror stories of years. Hopefully those are becoming fewer and far between. But a couple of things that another really good mentor I had at the time in emergency medicine, she was really instrumental in helping me. She's like, first of all, take a day to be upset. Like, feel all the feelings. Get those are valid. The anger, the resentment, the sadness, the fear. Feel all those. The second thing was, you're going to have to do a records review. It's part of the board process. They're going to ask for your records. So do a records review. Take some time between the feelings and the records review, so you can be a little objective.
Like sobbing.
You don't want to do those back to back. Don't want to be those back to backs. And just be like brutally honest with yourself, or have a colleague, there to like bounce ideas off of and be like, am I not documenting enough here? Is this too much? What do you do? Look at the records from your colleagues that you respect and be like, okay, I'm going to adjust a few things, because through that, you make it a learning experience.
Yeah.
You make it this is what we do. This is fine. It's okay. And then the last thing actually was, she went with me to the board that day.
That's awesome.
Which was huge, because you're there, the owners, it's an awkward situation. It's awkward. The owners there, they kind of have you in this room where you're like staring at each other, but not staring at each other, but like kind of doing one of these things. It's usually like these tiny little rooms. It's not like this big court. This is not SVU. This is like the back corner of a state building, and just having someone there. She was just scrolling on her phone. She's like, I have dinner plans tomorrow, and it was a nice distraction. It just created that.
She's got nothing on. It's so disproportional what she has on the line and what you have on the line. It's wildly out of balance.
Totally, completely opposite. Yeah, but it was so good. So the other coping mechanism: lean on your colleagues. Find your little community. If you're a solo practitioner, find even solo practitioners. We have great vet techs. We have people who, know the medical stuff. Don't be afraid to lean on people around you, because they're just instrumental in getting you through that event.
Well, your state and local VMAs are fantastic for that. That's one of the things I don't want to see local and state VMAs go away. I think that the connection there is so important.
They have a lot of, although they're separate from the state board, they know about the state board. So they're like, oh yeah, these things take time. Don't worry. Yeah. Our state takes, on average 12 weeks. Our state takes on average 6 weeks. Like, they know those things. And so they're great resources, because this is a state and local problem. This isn't, that's what helps you. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. So the last question I have for you is, now that you've kind of gone through this, I always like to think about, what do I wish I knew before I started? And so now that, like, looking back, is there something that you could have told yourself, or something that you could have known that would have helped in this process? Or is this just one of those terrible things you just kind of have to go through?
Well, I'm hoping, again, kind of one of the goals in the article was to help people cope with a terrible thing a little better than I did, because I did really catastrophize it. I was like, even though I can't find anything wrong, I'm not going to be a vet at the end of this. Doesn't matter what I did. Doesn't matter what I think. I'm doomed. So I think it's really important to compartmentalize this event in your life to the best of your ability. It's really hard, but this is not all that you are as a veterinarian. It's not all that you do. It's not a measure of your success or failure. You got to keep telling yourself that though, because in 4 weeks, you're going to be sitting around. You're like, I did my records review. I sent everything in. I'm going to practice when this is over. And you got to go, it's not everything. It's not everything. Because so often I hear people that are going through this process and they have really made this hard on themselves. And then they find out at the end, like more often than not, one, cases get dismissed a lot. And the other thing is a lot of them are like, oh, I just have to do 2 extra hours of communication CE.
I have to take 2 hours of virtual CE.
It's not that bad.
Like that's like you lost 10
You got to do it anyway.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah. You got to do it anyway. Just find a course that you don't find horrible. Hopefully one you can take away as learning experience and brush this off and put it behind you and keep being a good vet. Just do what makes you feel good. Do what you know is right. And you'll probably just be just fine.
Well, I love your perspective on one is getting through it, but then the second part is making sure you come out the other side in a place where you can still go on and be happy. And so I love the records review for yourself. I think a big part of it is when things go wrong for us, I think the first thing we do is look and say, what needs to change? What can I do better? What can I own? What adjustments can I make? And then you need to put it down and be done with it and say, nope, I thought about it. I figured out what I'm going to do. I am going forward. This is what I'm doing. And just try to compartmentalize and go on. But anyway, Dr. Dana Varble, where can people find you online? Where can they follow you?
Well, my column comes out every 2 months in Today's Veterinary Practice, which is on NAVC.com. So I love hearing people are reading it and connecting with it. So hopefully we'll see you there.
Absolutely. That sounds great. Guys, thanks for tuning in, everybody. Take care of yourselves, gangs. I'll talk to you later. And that's what I got. Guys, thanks for being here. Thanks to Dr. Dana Varble for being here and sharing her story and her perspective and lessons learned. Gang, I hope this was helpful. Definitely, if you know a doctor who chews their fingernails because they think that someday, somehow, some way, they're going to get sued, this could be a good episode to send to them, and hopefully it'll be something for them to mull over and go, well, I don't want that to happen, but I guess it wouldn't be the end of everything as long as I'm doing my best and not being negligent. So anyway, guys, that's it. That's all I got. Be well, gang. Take care. Bye.